They look familiar? No? Did you pay attention? Did you care? Not really. All right, well, this is Erickson. He kind of looks like Colonel Sanders. This is Erickson. That is Piaget. Piaget is the stages of cognitive development. And then this is Kohlberg. Kohlberg is moral development. So those are the three men that really play into growth and development of kids. There's a lot of other people out there. I mean, there's a ton. But these are the ones that we really pay attention to the most when we're talking about growth and development. Okay? All right, so let's talk about infants. And I used pictures of Ben with all the different stages except adolescence. So this is Ben as an infant. I tried to get all 5 pictures so that you could see. I think he's awful cute, personally. But, okay, child development for infants. The time period for that is birth to 1 year. That's when we consider infancy over. Birth to 1 year. Okay. Cognition, under cognition. In this stage, they have an increase in complexity of thought. What does that mean? An increase in complexity of thought. Okay, they understand more difficult things as time goes on. When they're approaching a year, which is at the end of this stage, they should be able to understand the meaning of no. If you say no, then hopefully they're going to stop doing whatever they need to do. So they're able to correlate the word with the meaning a little bit easier than when, of course, they're infants. They can't really speak at this time, but their behaviors, and this is still under cognition, their behaviors tell us what they're thinking. So, of course, the difference in different types of cry, if they're wet or they're hungry or they're in pain. Or if they're just sleepy. Okay. Play. This is solitary playtime. They do not play with anybody else. It is solitary play. And they are focused on manipulation of objects. As the year goes on, up to that year phase, they are learning how to hold objects in their hands. They're able to manipulate blocks. That's also when they're able to put things in their mouth. You know, they're learning how to take something in their hand and bring it to their mouth. So manipulation of objects. How much sleep do you think they should be getting at this time?
Like 14 hours.
Right, 12 to 18 hours is what they say. 12 to 18 hours. So a lot of sleep, especially in the very beginning. Now at birth, they're sleeping at least 18 hours. They're sleeping the majority of their time out of 24. Okay? Sleep is very, very important, and we hope they're on a good schedule, right? Especially in the very beginning. We hope they're sleeping during the day, at night, and more awake during the day. But when, in the very beginning, when they do wake up, it's really just to eat, to get their diaper changed, and then they go back to sleep. There's not really a lot of interaction with their environment. And then as time goes on, they don't learn to interact more with their environment. Okay? Communication. Can they talk? Babble. It's more of a babble. They're making sounds. As they approach that year mark, they may be able to say little simple things like mama or dada. But they're not really able to speak. What are some safety concerns in this stage? Putting things in their mouth, right, SIDS, and that's really one of the biggest ones is SIDS at this age. So safety, especially at the very beginning, you know, we talk about the back to sleep. Now, a lot of people say, well, when I was a baby, I slept on my stomach and I turned out just fine. And yes, and you're going to see over time that's going to change back and forth. It really is. Some babies actually do better on their stomachs, especially if they're colicky babies, that they have really bad tummies. Then yeah, they do a lot better on their stomachs. So it just depends on the child, but there is that initiative out there right now, the back to sleep initiative, that to make sure that they sleep on their back. So that, and what's the purpose of that? Because they can't really turn their face yet. So if they vomit or they get their face covered down in the covers, they can't turn their face away from it. What about putting stuff in cribs? Right. And you know, a lot of people think that that's the greatest thing. They decorate the crib, and you got the bumper pads, and you got all the stuffed animals that everybody has given them, and it looks so cute. But that's a danger, right? That's a big danger. What about big, fluffy, thick quilts? No, they don't need those things, do they? They really don't. If you dress them appropriately for the temperature, they don't need those things. So safety, SIDS, and putting things in their mouths, those are the biggest things. All right, let's talk about in the hospital. So kind of get your hospital sheet out. One with your little hospital on it. Okay. While these children are in the hospital, infants and toddlers are very similar in what they require in the hospital. What is the Erickson stage for infants? Trust versus mistrust. So they trust. They have a lot of hard time with trust versus mistrust, and that continues on into the toddler stage as well, where you're a stranger to them. So encouraging parents to stay is one thing that you can do while that infant is in the hospital. Encouraging rooming in, and you would think that that would be a given, but it's not. There are we get many children up on the floor that we are a glorified babysitter unit. You know, they bring their child, and then you have to call them and say, your child's been discharged. Are you coming to get them? So encouraging rooming in. What else could you do for these children to encourage that trust? Making sure their needs are met promptly. What? Getting down on their level. Cuddling, right? Holding, cuddling. Don't just go in the room to hurt them. And what did y'all? We had a very brief time up on the floor the last time that y'all were up there with me. But do you remember we have that specific area for painful procedures? Remember, behind the desk, we have rooms so that they don't associate their room with pain. Okay. There's a playroom, but really at this point, as an infant, playrooms are not that really useful for them. But making sure that they have comforting toys and music in their room. You know, we try to put mobiles or little things on the side rails. You know, the little, I guess they're like mobiles, but they make the music and the water flows across it and all that stuff. Okay. So making that environment as comforting and trusting as possible is very, very, very important at this stage. Okay? All right, let's talk about toddlers. The toddler stage is 1 to 3 years. 1 to 3 years. Cognitively, they are moving from what they call sensory motor to pre-operational. Those big fancy words, sensory motor to pre-operational stage. Their early use of language, they may be putting couple of sentences together, or a couple of words together to make a sentence, like me hungry, shows very early problem solving. Early problem solving techniques. Okay. They are beginning to parallel play at this point. So we went from solitary play to parallel play. If you go into, well, y'all went to the daycare, okay? Think about anybody in a toddler room. Did y'all see the toddler room? Were they really playing together? They typically, at this stage, you can put 2 or 3 in the kitchen center, and they're all doing their own little thing in the kitchen center, but they're not playing together. Does that make sense? So they're not, you can't say that, oh, they're having so much fun together. Not really. They're just all demonstrating cooking techniques and all that stuff by themselves. Okay? So it's parallel play. They're playing beside someone, but they're not interacting with that child. Okay, communication. By the age of 3, because this stage is 1 to 3, by the age of 3, they should have a vocabulary of about 1,000 words. And use short sentences. Okay, again, those are like those little 2 or 3 word sentences. Very tiny little sentences. Now, of course, as they get to age 3, their sentences are a little bit longer and they're able to do a little bit more. What about sleep? We didn't really talk about sleep, but what about sleep at this stage? What do you think? 10 to 12 hours at this stage. 10 to 12 hours. Will they take naps? Yeah. Still napping at this age. So naps are very, very important. At least 1 a day. Now, some younger children in the early toddler stage still need 2 naps a day. Maybe a morning nap and an afternoon nap as well. I need a morning nap and an afternoon nap. All right, safety. What do you think? Safety. They're very mobile. Choking hazards are very much a concern. Poisoning is a concern, okay, because they're putting things in their mouths. Falls or something because they're walking and toddling. Something else about this stage is, what is the Erickson stage for this? Autonomy versus shame. What does autonomy mean? They're wanting to get more independent. They're wanting to, you hear little ones say, me do, me do. I want to do it, I want to do it. They are, they're mimicking what they see adults or older children doing. So they're trying to do it. Okay, if they see mommy cooking on the stove, they want to cook on the stove. So that's where you get that safety problems. They'll reach up to the stove and burn their hand, those kind of things. So you have to be very, very concerned because they're mimicking at this point. So those are some safety concerns. The hospital is very similar to the infant stage. It's still a trustworthy stage. They have that white coat fear still very much in their mind. They're afraid of being in the hospital. They like to do things themselves, though. So if you allow them to, if you pour a syrup in a cup, a 3-year-old will like to drink it himself, to hold it and drink it. Or if you pull medicine up in a syringe, they want to shoot it in their mouth by themselves. So there's that autonomy kicking in. something else you have to worry about with this stage is as you're potty training them, because this is around the stage that you're potty training, around the age of 2 to 3. If they're in the hospital for a length of time and you've got a stressful situation, they may regress. So you may have parents who don't understand why all of a sudden their child is in the hospital and they're needing a diaper again. Well, it's that stressful environment. Something's going on in that environment to cause them to regress. So you have to be really, sensitive to that with those parents. Okay, preschool. Preschool, 3 to 6 years. 3 to 6 years. All right, so they've transitioned into that pre-operational thought. They're now are able to use words or symbols to represent objects or people. So if you have a 3-year-old, if you say, draw me a butterfly, then they're going to attempt to draw a butterfly. They're probably going to use triangles and circles and things that look like they could make wings. This is when they're starting to learn shapes and colors in the early stage. And then they move on to school. And I tell you what, those of you who don't have a kindergartner yet, they test them before they go into kindergarten now. And they have to know a bunch before they go to kindergarten. So, there are some advantages to daycare, I have to say. I felt like Ben was well prepared for being in kindergarten. They have to know their colors, their shapes. What else did he have to do? He had to be able to know his phone number, his address, write their name. He had to do some kind of physical activity too, like
They got to be able to
skip, hop, jump, and yeah. There's all kinds of stuff. It's a test to get into kindergarten now. So they have to learn this stuff before the age of 5 or 6. They have to know these things. So starting them early, representing things, being able to represent objects and people, symbols. Okay. Play. They are now learning to interact with others. It's called associative play. So they're associating with another person. Associative play. Now's where you see them if they're in a center, in the kitchen center. Then somebody is the waiter and somebody is the customer. So they're learning how to play, interact with each other. What about sleep? What do you think? 8 to 10 hours about this time. In the early stages, they need about 10 hours of sleep. As they go into kindergarten, though, the sleep decreases. That doesn't mean they don't need it, but they don't even nap in kindergarten anymore. I remember going to kindergarten and we had a nap mat. Did y'all have that? Yeah. You had a mat that you laid down on and you took a nap every day. No naps. No naps in kindergarten now. Which is very difficult for a lot of children who have napped up until that point. I remember trying the summer before Ben went to kindergarten to try to transition him into not having such long naps anymore because I knew he wasn't going to be able to in school. And that's difficult. But they come home very tired too, very ornery. Okay. All right, communication. Their vocabulary grows to about 2,000 words, and they're able to speak in complete sentences. So their vocabulary is about 2,000 words, and they're able to speak in complete sentences. However, and this kind of goes along with your hospital as well under school age, the meaning of those words is very literal to them. Okay? When they are in the hospital, you cannot say to them, this shot is going to just hurt like a bee sting. Because if they've ever been stung by a bee, and it was pretty bad, they're going to associate, or they're going to associate all bees now with that shot. So you can't, their meaning is very literal. You've got to be very, very careful what you say to them. In the hospital, if you say to them, I'll be back in a minute, well, to them, a minute is a minute on the clock. It's not going to be, if you're not back for an hour, then they're not going to trust you anymore when you say that. What else can you think of where they're very literal?
Got a bug.
Bugs? You've got a bug. You've just got a bug. Well, they're thinking there's stuff crawling inside of them. They do. What else? What do you think? Anybody else heard anything with their own kids?
I tell my son to hang out by his ears. He gave me his ear.
He what?
He gave me his ear.
He gave you his ear? Yeah. Yeah, hanging by the ears. Yeah. I'm going to hang you up by your toes or something like that. My grandma used to say that all the time. I'm going to hang you up by your toes. So a lot of those things are very literal, and you have to be very, very, very careful when you're taking care of these kids. Okay? Safety. What do you think? Climbing. They're even more mobile, and they're even more brave. Yeah, they can run away in the store. They don't understand stranger danger quite yet. If they see something that they want, they take off. So definitely the climbing, the more brave things that they're not. Swimming pools. This time of the year, I saw on the news the other day that we've already had a couple of drownings. There's a difference between them jumping in the pool while mom or daddy are there, and then they think that they can jump in the pool all the time. Well, you're there to rescue them at that point, but they're not. There might not be anybody there. So that's very animals. Animal safety. If they've got their own animals at home, that's something you have to teach your kids, is that not all dogs that look like their pet are friendly. And because they're going to go up to them and they're going to think that they're just like their home animals. So you got to be really careful because they don't understand the difference between those things. Okay. Okay, in the hospital, we've already talked about a couple of different things about making sure that the meaning of things, you're not literal about, you explain things but don't put things in terms that they won't understand or that they think. They're very magical in their thinking. A lot of people use that term. They're very magical in their thinking. Okay? That's why it's still, at this age, they still believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy, and of course Ben doesn't, he's 9, but all the Easter Bunny and all those things. They think that those things are monsters under the bed. Okay? So you have to be really careful when they're in the hospital to use terms that they understand. Let them do things on their own. They can drink the medicine out of the cup. They can hold the pill. They can hold the nebulizer. Making sure that they have time to play. That's an important time. We are seriously thinking about enforcing nap time up on the floor. We haven't done that in the past, but we're really thinking about doing that. So making sure they have plenty of rest. Okay, school age, 6 to 12 years. This is concrete operational thought. That's one of the terms for this age. That means that they're able to consider alternative solutions to things, and they can problem solve. So you give them choices. Now, let's go back to the preschool age for a second. With preschoolers, something else that you have to really be careful of, and even early school age, is that you only give them two choices. You don't give them open-ended choices. You don't say, well, how would you like your eggs cooked today? Well, you could be out there all day, them trying to figure that out. You say, do you want your eggs fried or do you want your eggs scrambled? Okay. Do you want your medicine now or do you want me to come back in 30 minutes? Okay, so you've got to give them choices. So, but allowing them to make that decision does help. Okay, so at school age, they're able to problem solve a little bit easier, and they can now carry on a conversation with you, and it makes some sense. Unless they're talking video game language, in which I have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Okay, cooperative play is at this age. They can play as a group. This is really the time that you should put your child in a sports group. Preschool, if you put your preschooler in a t-ball team or something like that, and they're two, you know what? Have you ever seen those kids? I did that with Ben. You know, we played baseball, and they spent half the time sitting out on the grass picking flowers. Soccer was a disaster because everybody cried because they wanted the ball. You know, they didn't understand, you know, that somebody, you know, that age, it's more of what? It's more for the parents. More for the parents to say, oh, look at little whoever playing soccer. They're not playing soccer. They don't understand the rules. They're just out there in a little uniform with a little trophy, and they're just, so all the parents can oogle and ogle over them. This is the age, though, that they learn rules and they learn how to play as a group, that everybody has a role in the group. Y'all know you've done it. Y'all put your kids in those things so everybody can say, oh, look how cute they are. All right, sleep. Again, they still need about 8 hours of sleep at night. That does not go down. And some need more. If they're involved in extracurricular activities, then they're probably going to be tireder and need more sleep than kids who aren't as active. All right, communication. They're learning parts of speech, and they learn how to write paragraphs, making little stories. A lot of those stories are very fantastical stories, very magical stories. Their creativity starts to shine. Safety, a lot of things are still the same as them. You know, they're very brave. They think they can do a lot of things. Sports comes into play. You know, sports safety definitely is a concern at this point. You know, other things, and we don't really necessarily consider this all the time a safety thing, but bullying is a problem at this age. I hate the fact that we have to even bring that up, but it is. So school violence, and you know, Ben, you know, and I don't know another way to, I don't know how to help him with this. I don't know if we've talked about this yet or not, but you know, it concerns me how sometimes how afraid he is just to go to school because you know, somebody going to shoot me today. And he even said that to me before. Somebody going to shoot us today? You know, I mean, that's there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. And the fact that they even have to do drills for shooter protection is scary. So, but bullying and school violence is definitely a problem. Making sure, too, that any kind of medications are locked up.
Online safety.
Online safety, very good. Online safety. Even at 6, a lot of them are smarter on the computer than a lot of other adults.
And actually trust an adult.
Yes, exactly. Again, it goes back to that stranger danger and who to trust and who not to. Exactly. Yeah. I hate to say this, but we have had some suicide attempts at the very young end of this, at the very old end of this age. We've had 12-year-olds that have tried.
Like guns.
Yeah, gun safety. Yeah, definitely gun safety. A lot of things that we didn't have to worry about when we were in school. whole different ball game.
I don't know that it was that we didn't worry about it. I think it was there. It was just not publicized.
Exactly. I don't know that it was as bad, though. I think it's definitely gotten
Everybody
much worse. The stress of school is definitely something. And this is our first year with the EOGs. And, you know, the stress that I saw on being in Ava's face was just unreal.
Yeah, they sell bulletproof backpacks.
Bulletproof backpacks.
Really?
Yes, they do.
Oh.
It has a Kevlar plate in the very back.
That's disturbing. Right there. That's disturbing. All right. At the hospital. Shh. At the hospital, school-age children, again, they need to be able to do things on their own. You need to offer them decisions. They need to be able to play as well. Play is a very, very important part of the hospitalization experience for these kids. Friends become important at this point too. So they're gonna want to have people come to visit. Not as much as the adolescent. Adolescent peer groups are extremely important, but they're starting to really pay attention to friends coming to play and coming to visit. But the biggest thing is letting them have decisions, make decisions on their own, and being very honest with them about what's going to happen. It's okay to talk to them about going to surgery. This is what is going to happen when you go to surgery. Okay, our therapists, our child life therapists are really good. They have little booklets and stuff about going to surgery, and they show them before an IV how it's going to be. They show them the actual cannula and all that stuff. So letting them see that's very important. Okay. All right, and then the last childhood phase is adolescence. Thank heavens I don't have a picture yet for that. But adolescents, your teenagers, that's 12 to 18 years, and they know everything at this point. They think, right? We did at our age. Formal operational thought, they're able to reason abstractly. So that literal meaning of things is now gone. And they're able to reason independently, so they're able to make some decisions on their own. Now, play, they don't really play. Sports, again, those who are in sports, they do have new activities such as driving, clubs that they might be in high school, extracurricular activities, band, those kind of things become important. Communication, their language development should be totally developed at this point, but they use a lot of slang. They may be learning a foreign language while they're in school. And I tell you what, speaking of slang, stuff really does change. We had a teenager who came in a couple weeks ago for a suicide attempt, and she had written a bucket list out. And we all sat down, we were all sitting down up there at the desk trying to figure out half those things we had no clue what she was talking about. absolutely no clue what she's talking about. And I'm not that old, but I had no idea what some of that stuff was. I don't know that I wanted to know, but you have to be really careful what they're talking about. Safety concerns, there's a lot, right? Drugs, alcohol, driving concerns, drugs and alcohol, driving, gangs, sex, yeah.
What about their sleep? Is that like 8 hours?
Sleep is definitely a concern even at this point. We say 6 to 8 hours, but I doubt very many of them get that. There's, you know, they're up. This group likes to stay up till 2 in the morning and sleep late. Yeah, but for school, they're not getting that. They still want to stay up till 2 in the morning. They have to get up for school. So a lot of them are not getting the amount of sleep that they should, and that is actually a safety concern as well. Can you think of any other safety concerns with this group? Peer pressure. Yeah, the suicide thing is very, very big, and I have to say, I have yet to work a weekend in the past several months where we haven't had at least 1 or 2 teenagers up there that we have to end up committing.
Like
Anorexia, bulimia, eating disorders is a big deal.
One thing to add to the cognitive is that although they can reason independently and abstractly, they still cognitively are connected to what you think.
Yes, very much so. Peer pressure and their self-concept is attached to what other people think. And what I thought Jeff was going to get ready to say too is that even though they can reason abstractly and independently, they don't always make the best decisions.
Still immature.
They're still their brain is still very immature, and they're still very, that's not going to happen to me type thing. Yeah, their thinking is not realistic. I can do this and I'm going to be fine type thing. So yeah, that's a problem.
When did they say your brain was full immature?
Early 20s. Yeah. All right, at the hospital, okay, so they're not going to go to the playroom per se, but we do have the teen room for them to go in. So it's still important for them to participate in activities that they like to do, like video gaming and the computer and stuff. It's very, very important for them to have their friends be able to come visit. Sometimes that can get out of control. You know, if you've got the whole team that shows up to visit, that's a little bit much. But they do want their friends to come and visit. They are going to not want you to talk about personal things in front of the parents. Like if you're asking them if they're having sex, they're not going to tell you that in front of the parents, but they probably will tell you if it's just you and them. So when you're talking about personal things, then you need to not have the parents in the room as much as possible. Because they're very independent. And they want that independence. They want to be able to think independently. So you've got to give them as much leeway as possible. Now sometimes you can't always do that, but as much as possible. All right, I do want to mention, even though it's not on your sheet, and I'm not going to test you on it, but I do want, for the purpose of us learning about developmental stages, let's still mention our adult phases as well, okay? Just to kind of refresh our memory, okay? We've got young adults, which is, for Erickson, he says it's 18 to 40, which makes me happy. I'm right there on the edge, though. I'll be a middle adult in February. So young adult, 18 to 40. Their stage is intimacy versus isolation. What is going on in that stage? What is young adults? What are they? Dating, marriage, career. We can't say anymore that it's having children, because studies are showing that couples, especially women, are waiting later in life to have babies. And we're going to mention that too when we do our pregnancy unit. So those are the things that they are going through at that point. Stress really increases in this stage because of all those decisions that are having to be made. Buying a new home or renting, or do they need to move somewhere to get a job? College. We didn't mention college at this stage, at the early age of this stage. So where they're having to make their own independent decisions. And a lot of kids can't do that. You know, they go away to college and it's a disaster. So, and then middle adulthood is ages 40 to 65. 40 to 65. Erickson calls these stages generativity versus stagnation, which I hate that word. They're stagnant. We've already talked about this. They're developing. I did have a cute little middle adult thing we can watch. But middle adulthood, they're concerned for their future generations. They're productive. They're creative. This is a very wide range because you've got some 40-year-olds who have, you know, young children still. They may be just having a baby at 40, right? So you've got a very, very wide range, and then you've got some who have already had their children. They're in their 20s. They're trying to get them out, so they develop that we have to go through empty nesting. You know, does everybody know what empty nest syndrome is? This is also a sandwich generation. What does that mean? Caring for children still, and they may be caring for their parents as well. The parents may even live with them. Okay, because older adults are living longer, aren't they? They're living a lot longer. So this is the sandwich generation. And things that they made decisions about in their younger years, in that young adulthood years, may be now affecting their health. Like diet, smoking, drinking, sex. All those things that played a big role as a young adult that they didn't think about. Or even in those adolescent years. Remember we talked about the adolescents just don't even think it's going to affect them at all. Not going to happen to me type idea. Now those things are coming back and they're going to haunt them in this stage. Okay. So let's see if I can get this to play. This stage is 60 years to death, and it's integrity versus despair. Okay, integrity versus despair. So they're looking back on their life. Did we accomplish what we wanted to accomplish with our life? Hopefully they did, because if they don't meet that phase, if they don't feel like they made a purpose in their life, that's when they go into that despair, so that negative self-concept. So they're worrying about a lot of other things. Decreasing physical ability, being alone, people dying. I remember my grandmother saying, she died at 92, and I remember her saying that I always thought how wonderful it would be to be able to live to 92. And she told me, not really, because all of my friends, everybody that I know has died. I'm left. You know, her husband, you know, my grandfather was gone. I saw on the news the other day a little lady in Japan that was 116. And you think, wow, what she's seen and what she's done. I don't know that I want to live to 116.
She outlived her kids.
Yeah, I'm sure. I didn't read the whole thing, but I'm sure she has. You know, you think about that. I don't know that I want to outlive Ben. You know? So those are some things. And chronic health problems start coming into play. There's some pictures that I'll put up for you today with some different special things that we have to think about with adults, like they're decreasing physical ability. They're not able to get around mobility-wise. We mentioned osteoporosis when we were talking about estrogen loss, cataracts, so they're having vision and hearing problems. So a lot of things just kind of go downhill at this stage. So the reason I bring this up is because when you're talking about growth and development, I think it's important for us to look at the whole picture, look at everything, and I think that's what makes this even the most important. Okay? All right, let's take about